Hey everybody, welcome to the Jimmy Dore Show. Next live Jimmy Dore Show, October 12th. That's a Friday in Burbank, California. Links for tickets right there. Abby Martin, our special guest. I'm here with Steph Zamorano, the miserable liberal, Ron Placone. Ron is going on November. Where are you going to be, Ron?
November, I'm going to be in Sacramento, San Francisco, Austin, Texas, and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Tickets available at ronplacone.com.
Hey, new study about the minimum wage. Higher minimum wage boosts pay without reducing jobs, study says. Huh? Wait a minute. I thought when you increase the minimum wage that hurts. Who does that hurt? That hurts the people. Then they got to get machines to do that. You got to get a robot and then. Minimum wage increases in 6 U.S. cities boosted worker pay without harming job growth, according to a study released Thursday by the University of California at Berkeley. In the food service industry, a major employer of low-wage workers, a 10% increase in minimum pay increased the average weekly earnings 1.3% to 2.5% on average across the 6 cities, the authors found. So it didn't lower their pay, raise their pay. They found no significant negative employment effects. Instead, they estimated that the impact on jobs at between 0.3% reduction and a 1.1% gain. So they found that raising the minimum wage could actually gain you 1.1% job, actually could gain you jobs. I'm guessing because the money you give minimum wage workers goes right back into the economy. They spend that money. So that maybe creates new jobs. As opposed to an estate tax where that money doesn't get spent in the economy. That money goes into an offshore account or it goes into a bank and it sits there. With a substantial number of additional cities and states poised to soon enact similar policies, a large portion of the United States labor market will be held to a higher wage standard than has been typical over the past 50 years. As a result, they estimate such policies will increase pay directly for 15% to 30% of the workforce in cities raising their minimums, and as much as 50% of the workforce in some industries and regions. So directly, some people will, 15 to 30% of people will directly see, but the ancillary effect of that is that 50% of the workforce in some industries and regions. So you directly raise 15 to 30% of the people's pay, but 50% of the people's pay actually gets risen or raised. By contrast, they said, the federal and state minimum wage increases between 1984 and 2014 increased pay directly for less than 8% of the applicable workforce. The findings contrast because they did it. Remember, they did a study about Seattle, and they go, "Oh, Seattle's $15 minimum wage hurt everybody." Well, these findings contrast with a study by University of Washington economists last year that estimated Seattle's $13 minimum wage reduced hours worked in low-wage jobs. So that's what they said last year, that, when we raised the minimum wage workers got less hours. That's what that study last year said, but this study contradicts it, saying the Berkeley economists suggest that the Washington study failed to account for a Seattle area employment boom at the time that led to workers moving from low wage to higher wage jobs. So there you go. Every study I've ever seen about the minimum wage talks about the benefits it has to an economy because all that money goes back into the economy. When you when Trump just gave this $1 trillion tax cut, that money doesn't go back into the economy. But when you raise the minimum wage, that money does go back into the economy. It helps everybody. So let me throw it over to my panel. Not surprised, right?
Not surprised at all. I mean, every single argument against living wages is so easily debunkable that it's almost laughable at this point. Well, if we give everyone living wages, my Big Mac's going to be $20. No, it's not going to be, because when the price of gasoline goes up, the price of your Big Mac doesn't go up.
Right.
It'll just be adjusted elsewhere. That's totally not true. And besides, the CEO is making about 475 to 1, the average worker. We could change that a little bit. Oh, well, it's meant for people that are just working part-time, like kids in school. No, that's not true. The point of a minimum wage is to be a living wage, and most of the people working these jobs are trying to support families. I mean, the list list goes on and on. We could just go on, and it's just
I love how people say that, to your point, Ron. People go, it's not supposed to be a job where you raise kids. McDonald's is just for high school kids. Oh, really? Then why is McDonald's open during school hours?
mm-hmm.
Who's working there then?
Dropouts. When we see anything about the minimum wage, that it has to be a livable wage. And what we find out that $20 an hour still isn't a livable wage. I think we were talking to economists that recommend at least $22 an hour would be more commensurate with what somebody should be paid. And I just think like a person who's earning an hourly wage, that money is going to go directly back into the economy. And that's what is necessary to rebuild our economy. And I just sit here and I think, oh, it's like slave labor that we're having people work at $7 an hour. And if they're making food, they're providing a really important, job. So to me, they should be paid. They should be paid a livable wage, and that livable wage should be attached to the cost of living. And there should be affordable housing. I mean, there's so many things that go into this.
Right. A minimum wage, like Ron says, is supposed to be a living wage. We're supposed to give people a living wage in the richest country in the world. You're not supposed to work for poverty wages in the richest economy in the history of the world. But that is how we're doing it now. And everyone thinks, well, if you don't like it, go to school, work harder. Well, it turns out everybody is. Everyone did go to school, did work harder, and everybody's making less money. We have biggest income inequality this country has ever seen, bigger than the Gilded Age. We got to go back to the age of pharaohs to see income inequality bigger than we're seeing right now. So the last time we saw this, Teddy Roosevelt broke up all the big companies. So somebody should come in and break up Amazon, break up Facebook, break up the banks, break up the defense contractors, stop the wars, and put all the money back in the economy. That's what's needed. That's called a revolution, and that's what needs to happen. And it's not happening. Bernie Sanders now wants you to go, play along with Chuck Schumer. We'll go with Chuck Schumer and Andrew Cuomo and Nancy Pelosi, who already said she's going to do PAYGO, which guarantees no progressive action can ever happen as long as she's the leader. Let's go with them. Let's stay with them. It's a dishonest thing for people to say they're going to take over the Democratic Party. That is dishonest. Do you think that is honest, that people really think they're going to take over the fucking Democratic Party by telling them to vote for Nancy Pelosi and Andrew Cuomo? That's how you take over? Anyway, I'm getting off on a different topic. We're talking about, hey, the Democrats, are they pushing for a living wage? Do you see them at the top of their lungs? Every Adam Schiff, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, they're always screaming about a living wage. Oh, no, they're not.
Well, no, and there's the connection right there. They're not talking about living wages, and as Steph pointed out, if wages would have kept up with inflation, we would likely be over $20 an hour. So the fight for 15, which I am in support of, but even the fight for 15 is not asking for what we actually deserve, and they can't even come to that. They're saying that's not incremental enough. So they're not for living wages at all.
So that's what the Democrats should be screaming about. That's how you oppose Trump. You oppose him with an alternative plan that people are attracted to, that excites voters. That's how you oppose Trump. You don't oppose Trump with something that turns people off, screaming Russia. And that's what they're doing. And you know why? Because they don't have a plan. Why? Because they're bought. Bernie knows how much they're bought. That's why he ran for president in the first place, because they're all bought and people needed an alternative. So,
I mean, Jimmy, we were listening to Chris Hedges' book.
Yes.
Farewell?
America, the Farewell Tour.
Right, America, the Farewell Tour. And they were talking about these cities that were just shells of themselves because the car industry went away. So these whole entire cities and these entire towns are decimated economically because they no longer have the factories. So it's like we were talking about how that's our model. That's the economic model, our capitalist model. Our economic that you can go in
is at the whim of a capitalist. If a capitalist can make a nickel more by taking his company that employs the whole town and moves it to Mexico, that's what happens, and your town is shit out of luck. That's the way we're organizing our economy, at the whims of capitalists? Yes. And people say, well, the market's perfect. And the market's brutal. And it serves a handful of people. That's the criticism of capitalism. And it's correct. It's accurate.
I think the invisible hand is going to lift all those people out of poverty any day now. I think
Here we are, the richest country in the world, and half the country is poor or low income in America. That's a failed system. That's a failed system. And why has it failed so hard? Because our government is bought by corporations. And the people who are supposed to tell you about that are also bought by those same corporations. The New York Times, the Washington Post is owned by Jeff Bezos. He's the guy you're supposed to be resisting. He's the guy we're supposed to be revolting against. He owns the goddamn media. The Comcast, they don't want you to have net neutrality. They own MSNBC. If you're against the war, you get fired from MSNBC. This is the problem. This is why we need a revolution, and this is why Bernie missed his moment and is failing hard. Hard. If Bernie gets elected president, he's still going to have a friggin' house full of Nancy Pelosi's and a Senate full of Chuck Schumers. Gillum, the guy in Florida, he already switched on single payer. He's back to he's going along with the corporate Democrats pushing for the ACA reform. Anyway,
and they already have it rigged because if I go and protest, then the police are going to bash my head in, and there's going to be no consequence. And
None.
if there is, and we file a lawsuit against that police force, who's going to pay for it? The police force?
No, the people. That's right. So, what started Occupy was when people were protesting in New York City, and the white shirt Lieutenant Anthony Bologna decided to pepper spray some women for absolutely no reason, right in their face. And the cops all stood around and watched him do it. All these grown big men watched another guy brutalize women, chemically assault them, and they didn't do a goddamn thing about it. There's your good guys.
And
that's cop mentality, by the way.
I just want to add to a couple years ago in California, the grocery stores, they were thinking about going on strike to improve their wage, and I heard repeatedly, well, I don't make that much, and I don't get health care. Why should they? And that's the problem.
Instead of thinking, wow, if the workers at Ralph's can make a breakthrough and get a living wage and get some benefits, maybe I can do the same thing where I work. Instead, people buy into the propaganda of being split with their co-workers, worker against worker. Why should they get that? I don't get it. So instead of wanting to lift everybody up, they want to drag people down to their level, which is exactly what the capitalists want. You should be in solidarity with your workers. But you're right. That's how dumb Americans are. They'll vote for fucking politicians who are going to take their right to unionize away. Look what they just did in Michigan and Wisconsin. And look at the South. They vote against their own interests all the time.
And like Ron says, right to work means right to exploit you.
And but people are easily manipulated. Why? Because we don't have a and I'm not blaming those voters. Those voters are manipulated by the press, and the press is owned by the people who want to take their union away. Steph?
And I stand with the teachers that want to go on strike to get better wages and better environment for their students. Because when a teacher goes on strike, they're striking on behalf of the students. And don't listen to the bullshit that the school district will say that they don't care about the children. Guess what? Teachers have children, too, that are going to those same districts, by the way. And additionally, we stand with the hotel workers right now that are going on strike in Chicago, because all these people are sticking their chins out in this bleak economy to rise, to help their family.
Right, to stand up. It takes a lot of courage right now.
It does.
And that's how they want us. They all want us one illness away from bankruptcy, so you can never strike. That's how they want us, Ron.
Well, and to just put a little bit of kind of insert some positivity, like reasons to be a little optimistic. We are seeing more striking than we've seen in years, and there's probably a lot we're not even hearing about.
There was a prison strike.
There's a prison strike going on. There's the strike in Chicago. There's the strike at Sun-Made Raisins. There's a couple other strikes going on right here in California, and I think people are finally catching on what right to work really is too. Because in Missouri, they shot it down by a huge margin.
That is a positive note.
They shot what down in Missouri?
Right to work. Right to work was on the ballot. They shot it down.
They did?
Yep. They shot it down in Missouri.
Even minimum wage, when it's on the ballot in Missouri, helps. People come out and vote for the minimum wage.
Mm-hmm.
So Missouri, which is considered the southern state, that's great to see them stand up and give and stand up for unions, which is what that is, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's one way to fight against the brutalities of capitalism is to have a strong union. And if we had strong unions and a strong social safety net and lots of social programs like FDR talked about and a workers' bill of rights and all that stuff, we would have a much better form of capitalism. Capitalism, Marx predicted all this shit that's happening right now, all people treading water in America, going bankrupt, 80% of workers living paycheck to paycheck. And then the cities, with their tax base hollowed out, are now privatizing all their services. That was predicted by Marx. That capitalism would eat the very foundation that supports it, which is what's happening. Look at Chicago. They're privatizing schools, parking meters, sewer systems, which is the opposite of what we should do. Should we privatize the fire department? Should we privatize the police department? Okay. So, by the way, point of this story, minimum wage is good for everybody. Higher minimum wage, good for everybody. Thanks for watching. Please make sure you're subscribed. Even if you think you are, you're probably not. It only takes a second to check, and then you have to ring that bell so they send you a notification when we drop a new video. Otherwise, they won't tell you when we drop new videos. And if you like our show, please help support it. Become a patron. We give you hours of bonus material every week, and we give a live stream. We do a live stream every Saturday at 2 p.m. Pacific time when you could ask us questions and we answer them back. Thanks for your support.